Figengiri Arabas, Klitzkie på Naudiunorim, Arabara Pachakuri Iris, Anna Fava Söse, Teso, Miamogo Kobogianim, Barun Faitabin, Arabara Rivets, Kopo Kuku Wataparabas, Torubom Murira Wardo Siriri Verisin, Kosabatapa Besom, Potum Meavum, Torifici Bom, Mea Kiataborayan. Raus, Aitoseri, Atski Office Manielu, McQueen's Resource Center, Mekostesirun, Choice Broadcasting.
One of the easiest ways to prevent the spread of COVID-19 is to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Let this message help you time it. Start soaping up now. Disinfecting high-touch surfaces daily is key to preventing the spread of viruses. Use solutions with at least 70% alcohol. Some disinfectant brands that have products that meet the EPA's criteria for use against the coronavirus include Clorox, Ecolab, Kimberly-Clark, Lysol, Purell, and SC Johnson. Choice Broadcasting reminds you to stay safe and stay clean. You can rinse now.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what we start off Tall Tales with every day, Monday through Friday at 1600, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's how we do it. And start out with the Second Amendment. I've got a little squib I want to read about the Second Amendment. You just give me a second here to grab it. I left it in my bag. So this is from a guy named Jonathan Jones, who writes for the westernjournal.com. And the title of the article is Gun Store Owner Relays Epic Stories as Libs, that means liberals, become victims of own gun control laws. Firearms are a hot commodity during the national crisis, as is the Wuhan virus. And I have to do this every day. That what I'm reading from here says coronavirus pandemic. But on Tall Tales, we are very realistic. I am very realistic, and I don't use the coronavirus nomenclature. I call it what it is. It's the Wuhan virus. So every time reference comes up to the virus, the disease, or whatever, I call it the Wuhan virus. There's only one good reason I call it the Wuhan virus. It's because I don't call it the China virus, which is probably what I ought to call it. Okay, so firearms are a hot commodity during a national crisis such as the Wuhan virus, when people have concerns about their health, safety, and civil liberties. Nationwide, more guns were sold in March than in any month in our country's history. Even in deep blue California, people have lined up to purchase firearms in record numbers during the Wuhan virus crisis. But now we're hearing what it's like to be in the firearms business in the Golden State, that's California, during the pandemic. And the amusing and frustrating stories of Californians who are appalled at finding out the real-world consequences of their state's continued voting in of anti-gun Democrats. Kira Davis, writing for Red State, recently interviewed a guy named Greg Buslog, the owner of a Southern California gun store and shooting range. Buslog, the proprietor of On Target Indoor Shooting Range in Laguna Niguel in Orange County, shared some stories with Davis of his recent encounters with many first-time gun buyers. The firearms seller told Davis that he's never seen anything like the recent influx of citizens looking to arm themselves. Quote, as the owner of an indoor shooting range and gun store here in California, these past 14 years, we've never experienced such huge demand for firearms and ammunition, even higher than the famous Obama rush of 2012, 2013. I guess people were as leery of Obama in 2012 and 2013 as they are of the Wuhan virus now. Makes sense, doesn't it? Buslag then described how hazardous it's been selling guns in recent weeks to people with zero background or knowledge about the safe handling of firearms. We tried to look at just just who the new firearm purchases were, and we believe that more than 60% of these individuals were first-time buyers. I can't describe the amount of fear in my staff as we had buyers show proof of safe handling as part of the purchase process as required by law. You have never seen so many barrels pointed at sales staff and other customers. It was truly frightening. Safety issues aside, Buslag described how frustrated some gun buyers grow when they learn they cannot just sign a form and walk out with a gun in California. The state's gun laws seems nearly criminal, so it's no surprise that people who have slowly voted to give their gun rights away have to learn the consequences of voting for anti-gun liberals, or not voting at all, the hard way. California requires a 10-day waiting period when purchasing a gun, along with a certificate proving gun buyers understand firearm safety and basic firearm laws. They also must pass a background check to buy ammunition. More than a dozen of these buyers actually thought that since they filled out and signed everything, they could just walk out and go home with a firearm. Several actually said they saw how easy it was to buy a gun on TV, and why did they have to fill out all these forms? He added the majority of these first-timers lost their minds when they went through the ammo law requirements. Most use language not normally heard, even in a gun range. We pointed out that since no one working here voted for these laws, then maybe they might know someone who did. And maybe they should go back and talk to these people and tell them to rethink their position on firearms. We were trying to be nice. Well, I won't read the rest of it, but you get the gist of it. Out in ultra-left California, we don't want guns. Guns kill people. Guns are very dangerous. I'm going to vote for Mr. X or Miss Y because they are really anti-gun. That was fine right up until the time when people felt that they themselves were endangered. They weren't just making some sort of an abstract choice for some political purity boy. They were now engaged in something that directly affected them, and they wanted guns. And they were surprised at what their own government had done to them. It's not about guns, but I have a feeling that folks right here in Guam kind of have the same feeling. They're really surprised about what their own government has done to them and is doing to them every day. Okay, so that's the Second Amendment portion of the program. And from there, we go to Zemi Ikotny. And you'll recall, you habitual listeners to Tall Tales out there in our international radio listening audience, that the Zemi Ikotny is their local equivalent of Meet the Press. There's only one difference between Zemi-Ikotni, which is my backwards play on words that translates to Meet the Press. There's only one difference between Meet the Press, and our Meet the Press, and the one that you see on NBC on Sunday. It's a big difference, and the difference is ours is better. Okay, so I start out with the Daily News, and guess what? The Daily News does not have an editorial from Guam. The Daily News has run some boilerplate from USA Today, from the USA Today editorial board. And yeah, it's about virus tests and Donald Trump and the usual stuff. You know, you can usually depend on the USA Today editorials to be Trump bashers. I think they have an incurable case of Trump derangement syndrome back there in the USA Today editorial boardroom. But I have preached the same lesson over and over again. In these days of super hard times for daily newspapers, the one thing that a daily newspaper can do that is very hard for others to compete with is run real local editorials, like the Post does. Does the Daily News do that? No, they run boilerplate from USA Today. So I usually explain that I give the coveted blue star to the better of the two editorials. It's been a long, long time since I've given a blue star to the Daily News because they don't even sign up to play the game. They don't even put a local editorial in their fish wrap. It's just this boilerplate from USA Today. Not like the Post. The Post is in there almost every day, almost never pulling its punches, always having a hard edge, always holding people accountable, always making you glad that you spent a little time reading it, because at the end of it you say, "Oh, I didn't know that," or "Those guys are right on point. I'm glad they're saying that," or "I'm sure glad the Post calls people out."
Sir, pardon me.
Yes.
Did you get the breaking news?
The breaking news.
Yes, sir, regarding Bill 335?
I bet it passed.
No, it didn't, sir.
Really?
Yeah, but there were a few senators that voted yes. Tina Muña, Talina Nelson, and Amanda Shelton.
And everybody else voted no?
Yes, sir.
That's amazing.
The checks are on our WhatsApp chat. You can see who voted yes and who voted no.
Okay.
Just wanted to let you know. Sorry.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's very important. Well, let me just take a short break. I'm going to look at the chat here, and then I'm going to come back to Zemi-Ikotni. Thank you very much, Real Joe Cruz.
Welcome, sir.
Yeah, Real Joe Cruz is always on his toes, always on the ball back there, having an almost impossible job being the producer of a radio show that's as near perfect as it could possibly be.
Thank you, sir.
But he tries to make it better.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title. When you absolutely need confidentiality in your real estate transactions, and providing solutions for complex real estate transactions as well.
And now, Now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, well, this is pretty interesting. Yeah, so a little inside information. In order for a bill to be voted upon, it has to go to third reading. So when a bill is first introduced, that's first reading. And when it comes to the floor, it's second reading. And a motion is made as soon as it comes to the floor to move the bill to third reading. And all the discussion you see on TV is on the motion to move the bill to third reading. Well, one easy way to deep six a bill is to not to vote to send it to third reading. If only 7 senators vote to send it to third reading, it goes to the inactive file. End of story. But as a general principle, if 8 senators vote to move it to third reading, it's probably going to pass. Well, in the case of this bill, 335, 10 senators voted to move it to third reading, suggesting that probably it was going to pass. Well, it didn't, because only 3 senators voted in favor of it. Again, without having any inside information here, I suspect that the reason, maybe I'm giving people too much credit. I'm suspecting that the people that moved it to third reading wanted to make it clear as of record that they were not, repeat, not voting for the curfew. And the only easy way to do that is to move it to third reading, because when bills are voted on, it's a roll call vote. There's no place to hide. Now, I did get a little inside information here, and that is that during the vote, Kelly Marsh Titano, Sabina Paris, and Therese Talahi passed. Now, again, a little bit of inside stuff here. When a senator's name is called on a roll call vote, he can vote yay or nay, or he can pass. And if he passes, obviously no vote is counted. The next time around, the senator's name is called, he can pass again. No problem. The third time around, if the senator passes, then the recording secretary, the Secretary of the Legislature, records it as a no vote. Now, some senators really like to show off. So when it's the third time around, they'll sit there, because if they're silent for 2 minutes, the Secretary of the Legislature records it as a no. Well, when senators go through this roll call process, what they're doing is the same thing as blackjack players do when they're in the casino playing blackjack, counting cards. So Kelly Titano and Sabina and Therese saw that there were 8 against the bill, or that there would be 8 against the bill. Then they decided to vote no. Had the tide gone the other way, they would have jumped off the fence and voted yes. So I want everybody to make a mental note of that. The people that voted no, and I'll go back through that again, perhaps after the big halftime show, the people that voted no are the heroes, the ones that sat on the fence. I'm going to mix some metaphors here. Sat on the fence, trying to figure out which way the wind was blowing so that they could vote yes for it without having to pay the price, are not heroes. And they probably ought to be finding something else to do. They ought to be, as Jimmy said yesterday, maybe they should become second-grade teachers. They would have plenty of time for recess then. Okay, so that's the breaking news. I'll come back to that. I was going to discuss Bill 335 anyhow. I'll come back to this at that time. Okay, back to oh, wait a minute. I got a phone call here too, don't I? It's John. Good afternoon, John.
Hey, what's going on there, Bob?
Yeah, well, good news, John. That horrible bill did not pass.
Well, that is good news. But I got a question, though. You know, we'll go back to your Second Amendment. I was just listening to when you were reading about the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
I'm a gun owner. I'm a registered gun owner, as a matter of fact. Here in Guam, before you can even go buy purchase a weapon, right, you have to have a firearms ID.
That's correct.
Correct? So
Yes.
I'm just kind of curious. I mean, what is the whole big deal with those people in California that are having to go get a firearms to do a background check versus, you know, like us here, we have to go through a firearms check. A background check.
Well, the big deal
So,
with... Go ahead, John.
well, what is the difference? I mean, you got to remember, I mean, do you want to sell guns to people who have a criminal history or who are not supposed to, by court order, you're not supposed to have any weapons or any firearms, or we're just going to go and sell guns to everybody? Never mind. Let's go. Just go ahead and sell it to everybody without doing the proper checks and balance.
Well, in California, they have a more stringent set of rules than we have here. So
our background check actually is not just local. You know that, right?
Yeah, it's an FBI background check.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they do local. You got to go get your court document clearance, and you got to go get your police clearance, and
you got to get fingerprinted.
You give them fingerprints, and
Yeah.
you got to fill out the forms, everything, the whole thing. You got to bring in your passport or any form of military or government ID.
The fingerprints go to the NCIC, which is the
Correct.
FBI's criminal.
So I'm not opposed to anything about it. I want to say that I do support what the government of Guam does, where they do background checks, because we don't want people to just go out there and just buy firearms just because they can, because it's our Second Amendment right. We want to make sure that these guys who actually has a firearm, one, know how to operate a firearm, two, knows the function of it, and three, are actually legit citizens who has no any kind of background that prohibits them from owning a firearm.
I think that's a reasonable viewpoint, John.
Right? Wouldn't you agree? Wouldn't you as a citizen make sure that if you see me walking down the street with the firearm, I'm pretty sure that's a responsible citizen right there that knows how to function and do his weapons checks and all that.
Yeah, well,
that firearm. I'm not worried about him.
I don't know about the responsible. I don't know about the responsible citizen part. I think sometimes people slip through the cracks, John, because I have a firearms ID.
Yeah, I agree. And then, like I agree with a lot of my friends. Guns don't
do you
kill
think
people.
I'm a responsible citizen, John?
No, I'm saying I agree with a lot of my friends when they say guns don't
my point was this. My point was this.
People kill people.
My point was this, John, that you said that you want only responsible people to have the firearms ID, and I said sometimes people slip through the cracks because even I have a firearms ID.
I don't know if I don't know. I can't speak for GPD, but I don't know if that thing will ever slip because you're going through an FBI check and you're going through local and federal checks.
No system's perfect, right, John?
I agree. No system. You're right, Bob. You're right.
All right.
What I'm just saying is we just want to make sure that everybody that owns a firearms, these are citizens that either has proper training or who knows how to handle a firearm.
I got you, John.
I mean? You don't just pick up, aim, and shoot. You just want to make sure before you shoot, you got to make sure you know what you're doing. It's a lot of responsibility to own a weapon.
True enough,
Correct?
John. Very true. Thanks a lot.
Responsibility.
Thanks a lot for chiming in on the Second Amendment. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob, for taking my call. Thanks for your time.
Okay, and then let's see. I'll bet I know who we got on the... Yeah, it's the other Governor, Leon Guerrero. The other Governor Leon Guerrero, your curfew bill didn't pass. What do you have to say about that?
No, that wasn't my curfew bill.
I'm sorry. I've mixed up on my...
I'm the anti-curfew Leon Guerrero.
I got my Governor Leon Guerrero's mixed up. My bad, Ken.
That's okay. Anyway, you know what this is going to do is going to take a lot of pressure off the gun shops on island, because now we don't have to arm ourselves to protect ourselves from our government.
And our Attorney General.
Well, we still got to protect ourselves against him, so maybe I was premature. After all, if I can go and smash up cars, try to break into a witness's house, and threaten to kill her while I'm trying to break in, but I'm only stopped because of the burglar bars on her entry door, and can still be turned loose.
Yeah, well, he said that they only they had to prioritize, and only the more serious people would be locked up, serious criminals.
Yeah, that would be the criminals that were out between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock when the checkpoints are in place, and they haven't got enough brains to tell the guardsmen that they're going shopping for food.
Right. Right.
So anyway, now we've got 2 out of 3 major infringements upon our liberty dealt with. Now we got to deal with the roadblocks. Oh, pardon me, the checkpoints.
Yeah, you know, I was not concerned about the curfew, because the curfew was another example of, like the previous caller said, another ready, fire, aim type deal, because she goes forward with a curfew. She has the thou shalt nots, but there's no or else, because if the curfew bill had passed, you could go out and gallivant all night long, and the cops pull you over, and you say, well, yeah, I violated the curfew. So what? Well, can you go home, sir? Well, yeah, I will when I'm done gallivanting. You can't arrest me because I haven't broken any laws. However, the checkpoint doesn't require any sort of criminal enforcement, because it, as you say, blocks the road. There's a physical impediment that keeps me from doing what I want to do, and it is a constitutional violation because it's an unreasonable seizure. So I hope we can concentrate on that. I really am anxious to find some people who would want to file suit about that. I had a caller yesterday, and he was talking about getting a dozen people together to file suit, and I said, well, you get the other 11 and I'll be your 12th man. So I think that's the only way we're going to be able to break this roadblock, Ken.
Yeah, I have the same opinion as well, because what we're looking at here, I'm also coming at it from a different point of view. The actions taken by the governor without any consideration are putting the safety of the guardsmen, police officers, and the public at risk. What she's doing is unsafe. She's endangering people under the guise of protecting people. But nothing she has done through this action has done anything to make anybody safer.
As per our conversation yesterday, they are not checkpoints, they are virus distribution points.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure they're doing a really good job at it too.
Yeah.
So when we finally get kits and start a wider range of testing, because right now the only people they're testing are people that fit in a very, very, very narrow high-risk group. And I think that once they start full-on testing, we might have another bunch of hot spots pop up. One will be in Asan, another one will be in Mighty, another one will be in Ganya, another one will be in Tamuni, and another one will be up in Dedido.
Right.
And they're all going to be traced to the checkpoints.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ken. And there will be a higher incidence amongst guardsmen than amongst the
police officers.
Yeah, than the other members of the population of similar demographics.
Yeah, see, that's another thing that I have with this from a public safety point of view, because in addition to there being 3 or 4 guardsmen at each station, there's 2 police officers at each station. So when you look at, one station going north, one station going south, there's 4 police officers, and then there's 4 checkpoints, So now we're looking at, we've taken 16 police officers off the road at a time when we don't have enough police officers to cover the areas that need patrolling. So if the governor was going to do something of value with the National Guard, it would have been better having them, patrolling business areas that are largely deserted, like Harmon Industrial Park area, the major, Chamorro Village, Agania, Tamuning, places where there's large congregations of businesses, but hardly anybody there.
True enough, Ken.
I think that once people start being allowed to go back to their businesses, we're going to see a large number of businesses reporting that that they were broken into during this emergency. And this could have been prevented had the governor been more concerned about protecting the lives and property of citizens than she was about establishing her dictatorial powers.
Yeah, a good point.
Well, I want to thank all the people who stood up with us and made phone calls and sent emails, because during the testimony we heard, for the first time, we heard almost every senator remark on how many emails or phone calls they've received from citizens.
I think that was important, but let's take another look at it. I think the real turning point was when those 2 demonstrators from Choice Broadcasting went down to the legislature. I think that really turned the tide.
Well, actually, there's a member of Congress that's probably introducing legislation to have you guys stripped to your citizenship because you caused so much weight to go to the east side of the island that the island might have flipped over.
Yeah, that's Hank Johnson. He might do that. He probably followed us on the internet, and he may very well do that again.
Well, I just wanted to let you obviously knew about it on the vote, but it's about time that the people started winning, and we see it starting with this issue.
True enough.
So now we're going to start getting our scorecards ready for the August primaries.
Well, I already found some people that aren't going to make the cut on my scorecard. The ones, of course, who voted for the bill, and then I also explained the fence sitters, who in some respects are more reprehensible than the people who voted in favor of the bill.
Well, we're going to take the long view, but I'm going to be interested to watch how the shift, whether or not this shift continues, because right up to yesterday evening, it looked like, the governor had reexerted control over the legislature when they passed this bill to the third reading file.
Right.
They could have killed it. If they had killed it, yesterday, then that would have been convincing that the senators were listening to the people. But the fact that they passed it through to the third reading file shows that how much pressure they probably were under from Adelut.
I don't know if you heard my analysis, Ken, but my just before you call, my analysis was that the easy, painless way to deep six the bill would have been not to vote to put it on third reading, not to have enough votes. But 10 voted to place it on third reading and 8 voted against it. So my analysis is that except for the 3 fence sitters, 5 of them wanted to make it absolutely clear as a matter of record that they voted against the bill. And the only way they could do that was to send it to third reading and then vote no on the roll call. So if they're sharp enough to figure that out, more power to them, because I noticed.
I hadn't even thought of that, and that makes perfect sense, because it was confusing to me when we heard so many senators come out publicly against the bill, to have a number of those same senators vote it into the third reading file. But you're absolutely right, especially since I started publishing the vote records on key bills. Now it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, Ken. Well, thanks for chiming in.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
So long. Okay, so, boy, it's already 1640, and I'm still working on Zemi e Kotny. Okay, but this is a really good editorial. It doesn't have the shock value as the vote on 335, but, okay. The Post, catch and release system emboldens suspects, silences victims. Before dawn broke on Monday morning, residents of Harmon Breeze Apartments woke up to terrifying acts of violence. A group of masked men, of course, that's not so surprising anymore. I don't know if you remember this, Real Joe Cruz, but my suspicion is that the armed robbers lobby are the ones that are pushing everyone should wear a mask.
Probably, sir.
Yeah, because you can be an armed robber running around with a mask on and no one pays any attention anymore, right?
True.
Anyhow, a group of masked men used rocks to shatter the windows of vehicles. A glass window and a security door were smashed at the apartment complex. Some of the apartment residents said this wasn't the first time these kinds of acts happened. Monday's incident occurred just before 2 a.m. When one of the residents confronted the alleged attackers and asked them to leave, the resident was threatened. These guys were trying to get into my house. They were screaming, "I will kill you," said the victim, who asked that his name be withheld. This crime spree left significant damage to property, not to mention a sense of fear among the apartment residents who were woken from sleep. Hours later, two 19-year-old suspects were arrested. It's not clear as of press time whether the police have made progress on rounding up the other three. But soon after the arrest of the two, they were back on the streets. The Office of the Attorney General issued a statement Tuesday regarding the case, explaining it gave some thought. The office.
The office gave a statement?
Yeah, the office gave a statement explaining that it gave some thought.
Interesting.
So here's this office, you know, how cartoons.
Yeah.
You know,
it's got eyes and a mouth and.
Yeah, and when someone is thinking, you see this light bulb above his head.
Yeah.
Well, I could see the Office of the Attorney General with this light bulb going off above it. The office was thinking, right?
So they don't want to put a name.
I guess
on
not.
The statement.
I guess not. We all know the name of the Attorney General, but we're not going to mention it. You know why?
It's personnel matters.
Exactly. Janela Carrera would not be happy if we mentioned his name. I'm sorry, if we mentioned their name. Yeah. The Office of Attorney General issued a statement Tuesday regarding the state, explaining it gave some thought not to add to the burden of Guam's already crowded jails. That's really considerate, you know. These poor jails, they're overcrowded. We don't want to send them more people. Pay no attention to those people over there in the Harmon Breeze Apartments that just went through hell about 3 hours ago. They're not important. The AG's office, along with many other jurisdictions in the nation, have to weigh concerns of spreading the virus to correctional employees, the prison population, and our community in general against the immediate incarceration of offenders, says a written statement from the AG's office. It's in writing, so that makes it really important. I wonder if we want to really give it a lot of weight, if it's not signed, if it's anonymous, then we really got something. The AG further stated, quote, it still continues to recommend confinement for defendants who pose the high risk of danger to the community. Now, if these two knuckleheads don't pose a high risk of danger to the community, what does somebody have to do? Have a nuclear weapon in his car? An automatic weapon? A machine gun? You know, coming to somebody's house, trying to break in, hollering, "I'll kill you"? The AG further stated, it continues to recommend confinement for the defendants who pose the highest risk of danger to the community, and will continue to put careful thought into its decisions during the quarantine period and beyond. Oh, I'll bet that makes the folks over there in Harmon Breeze say, "Oh, thank you so much, Levin. You're going to give careful thought to these kinds of decisions." Essentially, the two suspects were not considered a high enough risk to the public. The two suspects will have plenty of time to be on the streets. Unless the AG's office decides to pursue charges sooner, the suspects aren't due back in court until 3 years from now. Their release instructions indicates they are to appear in 2023 unless the prosecution decides to act sooner. Now, this is a little bit hard to understand, but this is how we do it. We don't have the same kind of bail system that a lot of jurisdictions have. We don't have what's called station house bail, so that if you're arrested for certain kinds of offenses, you can actually post bail at the police station and be given a time to appear in court down the road. We don't have that here. So what we do have is this citation and notice to appear. So a person who is arrested for a crime, instead of being locked up in pretrial detention and brought before a magistrate within 48 hours, which is constitutionally required, instead of doing that, the defendant can be given a citation and notice to appear, not be confined, not brought before a magistrate. So any time during the waiting period between the arrest and the notice to appear time, the Attorney General can go out and file a criminal complaint or get an indictment against the defendant and start the prosecution. He doesn't have to wait for that 3 years. So I used to think it was a pretty good system because it gave the Attorney General a certain amount of flexibility so that he could really concentrate on the serious crimes and let the not so serious crimes take the citation and notice of appear and pick those up during slack times. But when you're letting people like these two guys go, then I think it's time for the legislature to act, and I think we need to junk this whole citation and notice to appear mechanism. If you're arrested for a certain set of crimes, then you must be brought before a magistrate, like it or not. And there's a role for the executive to play here, too. The Attorney General prosecutes crimes. He's the guy that sends people to jail, to detention, after trial, or go to the prison. But it's the governor, the executive branch, that provides the jail and the prison. So if there's not enough room in the jail to put these two knuckleheads in there, then that comes back to the governor. And I think you could characterize it that way, not enough room, because given the Wuhan virus, the standard layouts of jails is probably not too conducive to halting the spread of the Wuhan virus. So just off the top of my head, this is what occurs to me. The governor seems to be pretty good at going out and renting hotel rooms. So maybe what the governor could do would be to go out and rent some hotel rooms and take take people that are in jail for something less serious than these two yahoos, people that have not committed violent crimes, people that have written bad checks or stolen from their employer or something like that. Put them in the hotels and reserve the space in the detention facility for the hardcore guys like this. I think that that's a better solution than just saying, well, you know, Wuhan virus, we can't lock them up. We just had no choice but to let them go. And when I talked about this yesterday, I analogized it to the game of Monopoly. Right now, what we have is an attorney general who's handing out get out of jail free cards. And because the story of these two people made the newspapers, he's not only handing out get out of jail free cards, he's advertising their availability. So you can bet that the word went through the community. Hey, you guys, you want to go out and do some burglary or maybe even some robbery? Now's the time. Because even if we get caught, they're not going to do anything to us. We got a free hand to do whatever it is that we want. Okay, a break coming up here before the big halftime show.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
Okay, back to Jimmy Cotney, back to the editorial. The two suspects will have plenty of time to be on the streets unless the AG's office decides to pursue charges. And let me do a little editing here. Unless the Attorney General, enough of this hiding behind glass doors that have the title of an agency on the door. It's the Attorney General that you hold responsible for this. If you are the Attorney General, you are responsible for everything that doesn't happen that should and everything that does happen that shouldn't. And you can't hide behind, and don't let him do that, Post, Attorney General's office. Unless the AG's office decides to pursue charges sooner, the suspects aren't due back in court until 3 years from now. And then the AG's office continues to investigate the matter and may charge the teen suspects at any time within the 3 years noted in the notice to appear in court, the AG's office stated. The release of suspects who are presumed innocent, not really. This presumed innocent is tossed around so easily. If you examine the Constitution of the United States, you won't find the word innocent anywhere. When someone who is accused of a crime goes to trial and the jury finds that he didn't do what he was accused of doing in the right state of mind in the absence of defense, the jury doesn't come back and say, we find the defendant innocent. The jury just says, not guilty. So there's a difference between being not guilty and being innocent. There isn't anything innocent about these two guys at all. Not a thing. And I've explained this before. There are more than one way that you can wind up in the pokey. A police officer, Let's take the extreme case. A police officer could see you walking down the street, pick you up, cuff you, fill out a few papers, take you to the detention facility, and put you in there, and you wouldn't see the light of day until the next magistrate hearing, which could be as long as 2 days later. That's how you could find yourself in jail. Or let's say that you actually did commit a crime and the officer had probable cause to believe you committed the crime. He picks you up, tosses you in the pokey, you go before the magistrate. The magistrate says, yes, there is probable cause to hold this person. I'm not going to set bail, or I'm going to set bail in the amount of $1 million. You stay in jail, ask the mayor of Jonia, you stay in jail until your trial. Do you stay in jail because you're guilty? No. Do you stay in jail because you're innocent? No. You stay in jail because that doesn't matter. So this whole thing about tossing the word innocent around like you know what you're talking about, not good, Post. So they say the release of the suspects who were presumed innocent until proven otherwise has become the latest in a catch and release pattern. Now, you know what catch and release means, don't you, real Joe Cruz? Maybe not.
I do, sir.
Okay, it's where is that term used?
Fishing.
Yeah, can you explain it to our international radio listening audience?
Well, people like to fish for the sport of it. They don't want to take the fish home, or there may be a law preventing them from taking the fish home. So they catch them, take them off the hook, they put them back in the water, and then let them go.
Catch and release.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess, so Senor Pescador.
Yes, sir.
Y abogo generat?
Yes, sir.
All right. The release of the suspect or presumed innocent until proven otherwise has become the latest in a catch and release pattern. This isn't the first time suspects were released, even when they posed a threat to the public safety. The issue with Guam's crowded jail and prison system in the midst of a pandemic shouldn't override the greater concern of making sure the public is protected from potential attacks by any criminal. Part of a prosecutor's job is to send a clear message, one that would deter criminals in general from brazenly attacking innocent people and damaging their property. The decision by the AG's office has given the kind of signal you don't want to send, especially because many in our community fear being robbed and physically harmed by desperate people trying to find a way to make quick cash while jobs are scarce and business closed. Once again, I don't think that's the threat. I don't think the guy who had a job and lost his job because of the Wuhan virus is going to go out and do what these idiots did. I see this as a totally different type of breed of cat, a totally different mindset. And even if we had full employment, you'd still find people doing this. But the way you deal with them is you catch them and you lock them up. You don't turn them loose. From the victim's perspective, this catch and release practice could have a silencing effect. I didn't want to call the cops because I was afraid that they wouldn't put these people in jail. They would know that I called the cops and they'd come back to get even with me. So I didn't call the cops. All right, I'll finish this up right after the big halftime show and we'll get into the card.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam. 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Tracking the origin. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The Trump administration now has high confidence that the coronavirus likely made the jump from animal to human in a Wuhan, China laboratory. Not as a bioweapon, but as part of China's efforts to demonstrate its ability to identify and combat viruses. Administration sources tell Fox News they believe a bat infected a technician at that lab, who then infected others in Wuhan. And once Beijing knew, they didn't sound the alarm right away.
Chinese officials are believed to have delayed reporting the coronavirus outbreak for 6 crucial days in January due to political concerns, allowing the virus to spread much further than it potentially may have. During that time, Wuhan hosted a mass banquet for tens of thousands of people, while millions began traveling through the country for Lunar New Year celebrations. President Xi finally warned the public on the 7th day, January the 20th. By then, the damage had been done.
Fox's Benjamin Hall, the administration also convinced the World Health Organization was complicit.
For an awfully long time, it said that there wasn't a pandemic. It delayed announcements about things that it knew inside of China that were going on. That's about politics, not science. We need a scientific organization that is engaged in the medical, epidemiological, and health work that it was designed to do.
That's Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Fox's The Story with Martha McCallum. Wednesday was the deadliest day yet for the virus. Deaths blamed on it in the U.S. now approaching 31,000. But President Trump says the peak for new infections has passed.
These encouraging developments have put us in a very strong position to finalize guidelines for states on reopening the country.
He's talking with governors about possibly reopening some areas before the end of this month. Asian stock markets have closed Thursday mixed. Dow futures are trading nearly 200 points higher. America is listening to Fox News.
Guam is home to strong and resolved people. As an island, we regularly deal with the destructive forces of nature together. We at Security Title know that when the storm passes, our families and neighbors will join together to clear the debris, to barbecue whatever is thawing in our freezers, and get back to the business of wholeheartedly living our lives. As our island struggles with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, let us remember that this too shall pass. Guam is home to strong and resolved people. As an island, we regularly deal with the destructive forces of nature together. We at Security Title know that when the storm passes, our families and neighbors will join together to clear the debris, to barbecue whatever is thawing in our freezers, and get back to the business of wholeheartedly living our lives. As our island struggles with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, let us remember that this too shall pass.
Plenty of people around the U.S. ready to break free of government-ordered isolation. Hundreds of drivers clogging the streets around Michigan's capital yesterday, protesting what they say are the overly restrictive stay-at-home orders from Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Pennsylvania state lawmakers have passed a bill to force Governor Tom Wolf to allow some businesses to reopen. The governor says he'll veto that and continue the stay-at-home orders after an opinion from the Justice Department that it was infringing on religious rights. The city in Mississippi will stop blocking churches from holding services in their parking lots.
Greenville Mayor Eric D. Simmons now says people may attend drive-in church services during the outbreak as long as they keep their windows up. City leaders last week ordered churches to close for in-person and drive-in services as long as Mississippi's stay-at-home order remains in effect, police issuing $500 tickets to several worshipers at drive-in services the next day. The Democratic mayor changing course after 2 groups filed freedom of religion lawsuits, and Attorney General William Barr submitted papers siding with those suing the city. Simmons on Monday said people would not have to pay the $500 tickets. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
Direct deposits of stimulus money have begun showing up in Americans' bank accounts. Congressional negotiators still stalled on adding millions more to the payroll protection program. The president says Senate Democrats blocking confirmation of several of his key appointments are making the fight against corona harder. He says he may order Congress into a formal recess so he can make recess appointments.
They've been warned, and they're being warned right now. If they don't approve it, then we're going to go this route. And we'll probably be challenged in court, and we'll see who wins.
While most of Congress is away from the Capitol, both houses have been holding brief pro forma sessions daily, so they are technically not in recess. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo, 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Serena, Two Lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
GRMC's Neuroscience and Neurology Department treats a wide spectrum of disorders associated with the nervous system, spine, and brain. Some of the more common disorders include seizures, epilepsy, dementia, sleep disorders, migraine, and stroke, which is one of the leading causes of death on Guam. GRMC's neuroscience team is equipped with the latest technology and the finest neurological doctors. To make an appointment, contact GRMC Specialty Clinics at 645-5500.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Another great halftime show. Empty stadium, empty grandstands. The marching band had to space itself. The members of the marching band had to space themselves 6 feet distant from every other member of the marching band. This also had a significant impact on the cheerleaders and the drill team, but they carried on. Okay, so here we are, second half of Tall Tales, and I'm going to start off the second half of Tall Tales with Martinez. Good afternoon, Martinez.
Good afternoon, Bob. You know, I hope in the future the Blue Star Award is early in the show. I would hope in the future callers would wait until after you award it before they make their first call. I think things will run better. But anyway, I'm calling up on Bill 339. The Guam Senate passed it today. Now, just give you some background. In terms of the age of when to enter and mandatory and the oldest age to be in school, that's set by state law. Oldest states do it unless it changed when it was on the school board. That's the way it is. But what 339 did is, you know, the school years ended early, and you have so many instructional days, which you recently returned to instructional hours, but it relates to instructional days. Now, years ago, the Honorable Mark Forbes, the 7-term, senator, 1.5-term speaker, said something like this should be decided by the school board. So the school board decided the number of school days, instructional hours. And then, in the 28th Guam legislature, the historical bill became law. Every child is entitled to an adequate education, which I think you know a lot about.
I know a little bit about it.
And it had 14 points. But one of the points was 180 instructional days. So now the Honorable Bob Klitzkie, the author of that bill, put it into the legislature decides the number of instructional days, which is also the number of instructional hours. Now my question to you, Honorable former Senator, is why do you think the legislature should decide the number of school days when the Honorable Mark Forbes thought it should be the school board? Why do you think it should be the Guam legislature by law instead of the school board? Please answer, sir.
You'll recall that the Every Child is Entitled to an Adequate Public Education Act, which I usually refer to as the Every Child Act, was not an operational statute. It was a statute that set standards, and there were 14 standards in that bill that constituted, I would say, the bare minimum for an adequate education, one of which was 180 school days. And I think you touched on it. The legislature got in and mucked it up a couple of times to the point now that I'm not sure anybody knows exactly what it means. And instead of amending Title 17, which is the education statute, they amended the item in Title I, which was where the standards were set. So the Every Child Act was, in a sense, a parallel to what a constitution does. It sets standards. It doesn't make a determination as to how an agency should operate. And the thinking was that you have to have at least 180 days to have an adequate education.
Okay, so you thought it should be the Guam legislature instead of the school board to decide the number of instructional days?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
That was easy. Okay, Martinez. Okay, where was I here? I'm just about to award the Blue Star. There's a couple of news items here that relate to this editorial. The PDN ran a story, fewer arrestees detained in effort to curb virus spread. Emily Ocampo told police a group of young men were throwing rocks through her window and trying to break down the door of her apartment while yelling, "I'm going to kill you." Police arrested two 19-year-old men accused of terrorizing Harmon Breeze residents early Monday morning, throwing rocks into a home and damaging cars. Now, I'm going to do something that I think Janella Carrera will roundly criticize me for, Real Joe Cruz. I am going to mention on the air the names of the two people that were arrested for throwing rocks through Emily Ocampo's window and hollering, "I'm going to kill you." One's name was B.K. Petrus. The other's name was Rafiki Kinam.
Oh, wow.
Is that a personnel matter?
I don't think so.
Yeah, well,
that's a deportation matter, sir.
I hope it is. I hope it is, because I think this whole hiding behind personnel matters is at least silly, if not worse than that. Real Joe.
You're right, sir. Maybe she should use powers to deport people instead of using powers to lock us all down.
Could be. Yeah. Okay, so a very good post editorial, hard hitting. Calls people out, and it really lays it out on the Attorney General. Now, I criticized some of the stylistic approaches here. I wish, it would be my wish that people that write these stories don't anthropomorphize offices and departments. The Department of Administration cannot issue a check. The Director of Administration can, or the Treasurer of Guam can, etc. And I don't attribute statements to an office, and don't say that an office, as in this one, don't say that an office gave something some thought. So I ding the Post on that, but I'm willing to overlook that and give them the Blue Star anyhow, because they said that which must be said, and they get the Blue Star. So there it is. Okay, so moving from the Zemi Ikotni to today's card. A little later on, I'm going to play against type, so you want to make sure you stay tuned. But this is what I've got on the card. I've got checkpoints versus common sense. I've got Shelton versus Staffers. I've got Catch-22, and I've got Romeo versus Lou. Okay, so on the first item here, checkpoints versus common sense. The checkpoints violate common sense. Now, for me to say that is really a mouthful because in my read-in, which some of you old-timers remember it when I used to do it almost every day, this is part of my read-in telling you what the show is about. Don't look for an abundance of common sense at Tall Tales. Your common sense is what tells you that the world is flat, that iron ships could never float, and that an object that is heavier than air could never fly. Well, of course, common sense is to be valued, but not when it's a synonym for reverence for the status quo or timidity. So I try not to use the phrase common sense as a justification for doing something or not doing something, because all too often common sense is a description of the prevailing level of ignorance in a particular community. However, in this particular case, I'm going to use it. The checkpoints versus common sense. Now, yesterday, I told you about a doctor that had called me who told me that she was at home and got a call to deal with an emergency at GRMC. At about 1400, she attempted to go through the East Agania checkpoint. She spent an hour and 40 minutes there and finally gave up. This is not a common sense approach to stopping the spread of the Wuhan virus. Now, I have to interrupt myself here for a second, and I got to ask the Real Joe Cruz, is there a way, Real Joe Cruz, that when I engage in sarcasm, you could come up with some kind of a sound effect to mark it as sarcasm?
I think this might work. What do you think, sir?
Better than nothing.
Okay, sir.
We'll use that to start with. Okay?
All right, sir.
Yeah, we'll use that to start with, okay? Yeah. Now, unfortunately, I want you to use that to mark my use of sarcasm, which could mean that you'll be playing that for 2 solid hours. So there's enough sarcasm to go around here on Tall Tales. But yesterday, when I described what that doctor went through, and I said she finally gave up and took a shortcut through Umatic to get to GRMC. There you go. I was attempting to highlight the ridiculousness of this checkpoint. She didn't really go through Umatic. However, I think that highlights the ridiculousness of the whole thing. Here you have a doctor who's on her way to a hospital, and she gets stuck in your checkpoint. Somehow having a doctor on her way to the emergency room will stop the spread of the Wuhan virus. Now, maybe I'm just not sharp enough to figure it out, or maybe I don't know enough about virology or epidemiology to understand how stopping a doctor at a checkpoint and wasting an abundance of her time will stop the spread of the Wuhan virus. She also said that there was a lane there that was supposed to be for people, essential folks, doctors, et cetera, but there are more people in that line than in the regular line. So this is, Lou Leon Guerrero, this is another case of your ready, fire, aim approach. You know what you want to do. You know you want to stop people and make them miserable, but you haven't thought through the details. So you're stopping the wrong people, and you're stopping the wrong people for the wrong reasons, and you're stopping people when you don't have to stop anyone. Well, I got another bit of information today. This was from someone who was heading down Marine Corps Drive in Dedido at the checkpoint there around Prestige Autos. And she got stuck in the line, and she said that as she was in line, there's two lines there. There's the line for the essential folks, and then the one for the hoi polloi, for the regular folks. And she said that the people from the other line cut into the regular folks line at the front of the line. Now, talk about common sense. I think everybody out there in our international radio listening audience has had to stand in line for some reason at one point or another. And I will bet you dollars to donuts there isn't anyone out there in our international radio listening audience who enjoys standing in line. You never hear a conversation like this. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, I'm going to go down to the movie theater. What's playing? Oh, I don't know. I just like to go down there and stand in line for a ticket. That just isn't how it works. People hate to stand in line. And what is even worse than having to stand in line? You're standing in line, slowly working your way up to the front of the line, and somebody cuts in the line ahead of you. Wow. And that's what that was the intel I got today. So far the score here is common sense 0, checkpoints 2. Because the checkpoint stomped out common sense. They kept a medical doctor, wasted her time on her way to deal with an emergency at GRMC, and then they just a regular citizen who happened to be Madame Ko at that is trying to do the right thing and waiting in the line when somebody from the other line cuts the line. All right. I got a phone call here on line 1 that's about time for another Joe. No, it's Senator Chris. Good afternoon, Senator Chris.
Have a day, Senator, Your Honor, my favorite Marine, Bob. I will always wait in line on tall tales, regardless, and I will never cut in line or even ask to cut in line.
Fair enough.
I was just a little curious with the breaking news. I'm probably ahead of the show, and I apologize for that, but I was a little surprised the first card item wasn't the 12-3 vote at the legislature in a rousing rejection of Bill 335.
That's because at 1600, I didn't know that the vote had been held, Chris.
So is it breaking news on Tall Tales?
Yes. Yeah, it was. Somebody, as you were, Ray sent a WhatsApp to the Real Joe Cruz. The Real Joe Cruz interrupted Jimmy Ikotny to break the news. Can you imagine that? The temerity of that man to interrupt Jimmy Ikotny?
Unfortunately, I had a chore probably going on at that time, but yes, in interrupting Jimmy Ikotny is woo. That must be serious breaking news.
It shows you that the Real Joe Cruz has an abundance of courage to take on something like that. He did the right thing. You know, we're not going to Crozier him, Tim. Chris, we're not going to Crozier him because he spoke up like that, and so he did the right thing. But anyhow, go on with what you're saying.
You know, cult of personality has so many iterations, and it takes on a new life every time. And you know, to put that new cloak on, to say, you know, I'm gonna put my armor on. I know I probably might get, a battering ram on the left side and a pinball on the other side, but I'm going to run in there and I'm going to take the bravery to cut through Jimmy Ikotny. Then this is a new badge of honor for the cult of personality of the Real Joe Cruz.
Absolutely.
Doing double duty.
Absolutely.
Doing double duty.
Yeah, absolutely. This was Joe Cruz, the Real Joe Cruz PM, who showed that he was a very courageous Real Joe Cruz.
You better keep it down or the Secretary of Navy might have me canned.
I thought it was that Ray Gibson might have to buy you a bigger chair over there inside that room because maybe your buttocks couldn't fit on the current one you have. Anyway.
Actually, what he needs is a bigger headset.
Anyways, Bob, I just a pithy remark on that issue. I've had the pleasure and the difficulty of counting votes before, either on the floor or having to report to a governor the results of a vote. And I got to say that I am extremely proud of those members of the legislature today who showed not only courage, but also showed, understanding the sentiment of the people. And the reason why I wanted to dovetail that from your discussion on, the roadblocks, that's just like Wuhan virus. We're not going to call it COVID-19. We're going to call it roadblocks. Other measures right now that are proving to be more disruptive and not in the right lane of trying to really do what we need to do to help our island going forward. I hope the message is now loud and clear. And I know that, from a governor's perspective, this is one of the worst outcomes that they could ever look towards, most especially when their caucus breaks down as extreme as this. And I just wanted to see if you would agree with me on that.
I do agree with you. And the governor was so heavily invested in it to see it turn to ashes on her. And as you say, her caucus fall apart on it. It's a big defeat for the governor.
So tall tales, the point, Ray Gibson, the protesters, everybody, particularly on this particular media outlet, congratulations on getting the word out. There's no coercion. People are just sensible. They understand what's going on. But having the fourth estate really weigh in so heavily, you and I both know, Bob, senators don't make decisions. A few of them might and might not, based on a phone call from whoever might call in to their line that might say, hey, I need to discuss this with you. We've had discussions before, but it really is the people, which means this is a people movement. When you see 12-3, that means those senators said, I'm just not concerned right now on how you feel about this and what you think, but I can feel that the overwhelming majority of the public has had enough and will not tolerate this. And regardless of my loyalties to you, I'm going to vote what I believe is the truth, which is the people movement. So congratulations, Tall Tales, and the point. And congratulations, people of Guam.
Well, I thought that when Ray and I went down to the legislature, that was the turning point. But had it not been the turning point, we were going to call out the really heavy artillery.
When I see Ray and Bob Klitzkie in the same line, definitely I'm going to take notice.
Yeah, well, if that hadn't worked, we were going to send the real Joe Cruz down there.
I think that's what people were really worried about. I think that's what people were really worried about. They said if the real Joe Cruz has to show up here,
it's kind of like that's what the 12 were thinking. Yeah,
that's what I told Bob and Ray. I said, "Don't make me go down there."
Real Joe Cruz. I know this is a bad comparison, but that's kind of like Mom when she says, "Don't make me come into that room."
Yeah. Well, you're a little bit of seriousness. You're right. The people spoke, and for once, the legislators listened. Chris, as long as I got you here, just a couple of things. I don't know if you were listening earlier when I mentioned that when 10 senators voted to send the bill to third reading, I was a little surprised because that would have been the easier way to deep six it. But,
right.
But 10 voted to send it to third, and then when it got to third, 12 voted against it. And my analysis is that some of those people wanted to make it absolutely clear as a matter of record that they were against that bill. They didn't want an easy way out.
I concur. I mean, it's you saw a 3-3-4 get thrown back to committee, and we all know what that means.
Yeah.
Throw back to committee means it's dead. It ain't never coming back out. We've had enough of that, and that's a polite way of saying no, thank you. But you're absolutely right. I mean, to drop that thing down in there, and then vote against it meant, regardless of how you dress this thing up, no matter what amendments you put on it. And that's another point I wanted to make, Bob. And I'm not trying to, disparage any senator who wants to try to put something into a piece of legislation that would exhibit some sort of control. But you and I both know the legislature and the governor, when it comes down to powers, the legislature, as we've discussed so many times, has the immense power because they could vote on a bill and repeal a bill in seconds. But the governor has also that sway of, if you put in all those nice things of send us a report, tell us what you're doing. I want you to have to do this and do that before you make this move. You know as well as I do, Bob, when a piece of legislation passes that gives immense amount of powers, they just sidestep those things and have flowery letters to say why they didn't do this or why they didn't do that. Crafty people that come out with reasons of why, we forgot, okay, the report will be coming in 30 days. You cannot micromanage the operation of the executive branch. You have to be clear on what you want and expect and what is going to be in law. You can't play around with that. When you pussyfoot around and you put in all these, but they have to do this. No, it doesn't happen. And they'll have 1,000 reasons for it not to happen. So I completely agree with you, Bob.
Okay, Chris. Well, there we go. It's time for the seventh inning stretch, but I'm glad you got in before the seventh inning stretch, Chris. Nice talking to you.
Always on the show, Bob. Take care and look forward to the balance of it.
All righty. Okay, seventh inning stretch, and I'm going to go from Wrigley Field straight to France to entertain my next caller.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. One of the easiest ways to prevent the spread of COVID-19 is to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Let this message help you time it. Start soaping up now. If you're sick or caring for someone who is, wear a surgical mask or N95 respirator when you're around others. If you're not sick, wear a washable cloth face covering in case you're an asymptomatic carrier. Don't touch the front of the mask and always remove it from the back. When you cough or sneeze, use a tissue or your upper sleeve, not your hands. Choice Broadcasting reminds you to stay safe and stay clean. You can rinse now.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Give them a call at 646-7616 or 777-7792. Or you can check them out at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
Seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago, Illinois. Nobody there. Baseball field is empty. The grandstand is empty. And I just peeked out of the corner of my eye here, and I noticed Eric Rosario chimed in, and he said one could argue that they're using common sense. And you're absolutely right. That's what they use almost every day. One of our callers, one of the Toms, used to label it as common sense. Yeah, so you're right on that one, Eric. Okay, let's, je parle français pour un petit peu, monsieur. So let's see who's next on the line. Oh, it's Frenchie. Okay, good afternoon, Frenchie.
Hello, Bob. It sounds like your French is better early in the morning than late in the afternoon. Huh?
Well, I get tired, you know.
Yeah. Anyhow, I wanted to kind of comment on on what I call the choke points rather than the checkpoints. But before I wanted to comment on what John said earlier in the show regarding the purchase of guns on Guam. And I think, his point is a good point that, you don't want people purchasing guns that shouldn't have them, i.e. criminals and people with mental deficiencies and things like this. And also, you want people to be able to be good and responsible gun owners. Yet at the same time, here on Guam, what we have is a triple jeopardy. Number one, in the U.S., every state basically legislates on how they want to do the purchase of guns. I mean, it goes from very extreme states like California, Hawaii, New York, and Guam, where you have to basically have a license in order to purchase a gun. So you have to jump through the first hoops, which is to get yourself being verified that you are not a criminal and so on and so forth. This is what we have, the ID gun cards here on Guam. But then when you purchase or when you bring a gun to Guam, you then have to register it, which most states do not do, because most states consider that registering gun is against the Second Amendment. And also, if you want to sell your gun at one time or gift it to, I don't know, your son, your daughter, or somebody else that you like, you again have to jump through hoops in order to do so. So those are all kind of restrictions to what other states do not do. California, as you mentioned, does 10 days waiting list, and then after, if you want to purchase ammo or reloading equipment, you also have to get, again, another. Basically, they are trying to discourage people from going through the process. And I know a lot of people that would like to have a gun just for the sake of it and go to the shooting range once in a while, but don't want to put up with all the paperwork. And that is the idea behind it, that you want to discourage a large number of people to do so, except when we have an emergency situation or a time of crisis where suddenly people realize, oh my God, we have all those laws on the books and I cannot purchase a gun. Or if you have, and that happens a lot, and it has happened in some states that have very restrictive laws where people that had what you call an order for somebody not to come close to you from the court and wanted to purchase a gun for self-defense because they felt threatened by that person, could not do it and ended up being murdered before she could even purchase that gun and get one. So that was a big point. I think it's very important. No matter what the state, some states you can have a gun, no problem at all. There is no licensing issues or whatever, like Alaska or Arizona and all that. But you still need, when you go purchase a gun in a store, you still need to go through the federal authorization, which means they run your file through the FBI and they either approve the sale or disapprove the sale, right?
Okay.
So that's one of the issues here on Guam. I feel like a lot of people feel like, oh yeah, that's all very nice. Actually, it's not, because the government knows every gun that you have at your house, and frankly, it's none of their business. That's my point of view.
And we had a guy named Jeff Evans who was prosecuted on a gun violation under some rather suspicious circumstances that I'll talk about sometime.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it all revolves around the gun registration law.
Yeah. Here on Guam?
Yes.
Okay. Well, one day you can enlighten me on that story. So the other thing is that I wanted to comment on is what I call the choke points, because they are not checkpoints, they are choke points. And that's, I think, was the idea of the governor, was to create a choke area where people have to slow down. And again, a little bit like the registration of the gun, to deter people from using their car to move around. And, that kind of intention raised all kinds of alarm bells to me. Number one, like the other governor mentioned, Ken, it is not a good process for not spreading the virus. I think those choke points have a lot of issues and putting at risk a lot of our men and women who are on the first front, ready for no gain. And that's kind of irritating to see. The other thing that nobody has been talking about, and then you know where I live, and you know how those small streets are in the back of Dededo, is that when you have a checkpoint by the car dealership there, guess what? Everybody is taking the back roads because they don't want to wait for an hour to go through the checkpoint. And all those small roads, which have no sidewalks and everything, so whoever is going to the local store has to walk on the street, and the jungle is overgrown. There is a lot of traffic. Like right now, there is one car after the other of people trying to get back home. And early in the morning when they put those things, it's the same thing. So we are creating situation where not only we're having a problem with the spread of the virus as those choke points, but also we're sending a lot more traffic on roads that are not made for it. Those are neighborhood roads that are narrow, that are kind of dangerous, and where you have kids a lot of time and dogs and things running around. So that's something that's never mentioned, but it's also something that we should think about. And finally, regarding those choke points, I think it's something that you bring a lot forward, which is having an efficient government. And in this case, we are not efficient at all. We're using our manpower in the wrong way. I like to use the Mamamco hours to go do my grocery shopping in the morning once a week. Now I'm trying to push it to once every 2 weeks. And what I have noticed is that between 5 and 6 in the morning, there is a lot of those guys similar to the ones that they were released by the Attorney General that are going around with machetes and sticks on bicycle or on foot in neighborhoods where you don't see one single cop. And the reason is, number one, even in good times, we have a shortfall of manpower at the police department. And then number two, right now, they are being diverted to static position where they do absolutely no good instead of being on patrol. We should have those policemen on patrol and maybe use the National Guard under the supervision of a police officer and patrol the neighborhoods. That would be a much better deterrent to crimes and having all those yahoos going around terrorizing people in the neighborhoods and having an irresponsible attorney general that releases them and creates an atmosphere of fear. What is it going to take? Is it going to take somebody to enter a house like mine where I'm going to shoot them as soon as they come in the house, and then I'm going to be the one that's going to be under suspicion for murder? So, a lot of our people in power really do not think about the consequence of their action. And the problem that we have, is the virus, but it's also the number of people that are at home and the lack of security that has grown exponentially, and people in neighborhoods are not happy. And I think you kind of felt this in the debate with all the people calling their senators and everything, but they have not addressed the issue. People are really not happy of seeing all those cuckoos going around and trying to throwing stone at dogs in the streets, and it's kind of a breakdown of society. And it's almost like if the governor wanted to create a situation of emergency where she's really going to need the power for emergency power. And it's very disheartening to see. Senator Dueñas, we just called, mentioned the fourth estate. And I think when he had the fourth estate in mind, he was talking about you and Ray and other things. But frankly, the fourth estate on Guam, I mean, you know, I've renamed the PDN the Partisan Despotic News. KUAM is, you know, they basically filter for what the governor wants. I mean, they are not asking the tough question. They are just cheerleaders. They are not the fourth estate. If it was not for shows like yours, like Ray, or Candid News, you know, which is pretty radical sometimes, but we wouldn't have had all the pressure happening that did happen, because all those news outlets and the PDN would rather run stories about the bad hair of the president at the White House or whatever, but they don't do their job regarding reporting on the abuse of power and the mismanagement from our administration. And this is very, very disheartening, and I think a lot of people are getting very PO'd by the situation and have a sense of, you know, when they work, people are busy. They don't have too much time to worry about that. But now that they are home and watching what's happening, I think you have a lot of people getting very frustrated.
I agree, Frenchie. I agree 100%.
Yeah. So I don't know if that shot across the bow is going to wake up the governor, but it sounds like she's just communicating, you know. Right now she's threw the Attorney General under the bus for those two kids that were released and say, oh, this is terrible. I was upset that they were released. But she has not done anything to prevent those kids to be out on the street. Now she's throwing the AG under the bus. I mean, that's what she does. She throws people under the bus, but she doesn't come with real solutions. So I guess we have to keep on putting the pressure.
I suspect that if they weren't non-essential items, a lot of folks that work for the government would be buying creepers, the kind of devices.
Yeah.
The one that your mechanic uses when he wants to get under your car, right? It'd be a lot easier to get under the bus with a creeper.
Yeah, you're right. And the real Joe has forgotten to do your to do the little music for your sarcastic comments. There you go, Real Joe.
Thank you,
They've
Real
been
Joe.
real tough on Real Joe all day today. So
yeah, well,
it's a kind of a pack on Real Joe day today.
Yeah, well, every day is Real Joe Cruz Day on Tall Tales.
Poor Joe. All right. Well, you guys have a good day.
Thanks a lot for calling, Frenchie. Yeah, the ever-popular Frenchie. He's always got some really good points that we appreciate here in Tall Tales. So, I got a break coming up here for the home stretch, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Cocoa Coffee Company is now available at Circle K. Single origin coffee beans carefully sourced and locally roasted to give you the freshest cup of coffee Guam has to offer. Grab a cup that's brewed every 30 minutes or purchase a bag of the locally roasted whole beans. Flavors now serving: light medium roasted Ethiopia and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain. Exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
One of the easiest ways to prevent the spread of COVID-19 is to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Let this message help you time it. Start soaping up now. The virus can survive in the air for 3 hours, on copper for 4 hours, on cardboard for 24 hours, and on plastic and stainless steel for 72 hours. Disinfect phones and common household surfaces like tables, doorknobs, light switches, countertops, toilets, faucets, and sinks, desks, including computer keyboards and kids' toys. Choice Broadcasting reminds you to stay safe and stay clean. You can rinse now.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific
for 65 years.
Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, empty grandstands, empty racetrack. Louisville, Kentucky is still there, still sitting there in the Ohio River, but not much activity going on. So the next item on the card is Senator Shelton versus staffers. And you might think, well, why talk about Bill 335? It's over. Whatever you got to say is going to be anticlimactic. But there is a lot to be said about Bill 335 and the legislature in general and how they do their business and how they manage to screw up so badly. And I want to pick that up tomorrow, but I can't do it in 10 minutes. So I'm going to combine two other items on the card. I've got Catch 22, which is not somebody versus somebody else. It's Catch 22. Yeah, I'm sure you saw the movie, real Joe Cruz.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Catch 22. And I've got Romeo versus Lou. So Romeo has a blog called Guam Blog. It's pretty interesting. It's a little bit on the raw side, but he really digs into things that none of the false enforced politeness that you find in some of the other places. And what he does in the post that I have in front of me here, he drops the dime on some people that didn't have to go through the regular quarantine measures. He names names, he's got pictures and the whole thing, and he lays it out, and it ties in quite nicely with some of the things that I've been saying about Lou and her lack of consistency, which is really a polite way of saying she's so hypocritical that she talks about social distancing and sheltering in place and all this stuff at the same time that she's tolerated members of her own staff and her driver going to that poker party in Humatak. And as far as we know, has done nothing about it except telling Janela Carrera to say, we don't talk about personnel. So Romeo kind of really lays it out here about who got to travel and come back and not go into quarantine and that sort of stuff on his blog, Guam Blog. And it ties in nicely with what I call Catch 22. I've got an article here that ran in the Post that talked in terms of Half-a-Day Bingo Hall having 2 or 3 positive cases, Sinahanya Senior Citizen Center, 3 positive cases, a golf trip to the Philippines, 4 players and 2 household contacts positive, etc. So, and then there was a story that ran in the paper about a veteran who came back from Tripler, and he had a note from a doctor that said, this guy is not symptomatic for Wuhan virus. So when he gets to the airport, they throw him into quarantine for 15 days. So a little research, and I figured out how you can arrive in Guam from Honolulu not having been tested before you left, not having a certificate showing that you tested negative. What you must do, you must show up in Guam being symptomatic for Wuhan virus, because if you're not symptomatic, they'll just haul you off to one of the hotels for 15 days. And if you say, well, just let me take a test, I'll take a test, and if I'm not symptomatic, I'll go home. They'll say, I'm sorry, sir, we can't give you a test. You have none of the symptoms. You have to go into quarantine. You mean I got to go into quarantine because I don't have any symptoms? Well, I'm sorry, we can't give you the test. We don't have that many tests, so we only give the tests to people that are symptomatic, you know, the sore throat, the body aches, difficulty breathing, high fever, etc. So, no, sir, you don't have any of the symptoms, so we can't give you the test. Okay? So you got to go into quarantine. So what you must do if you want to get out of that conundrum, when you arrive, you must show the symptoms for coronavirus. Because if you do, they'll say, oh, sir, I'm sorry, you're showing symptoms for coronavirus. We're going to have to test you. Yeah. So they test the guy for coronavirus, and if he's not positive, sir, you can go home. You're not positive for coronavirus. Thank you very much. If he is positive for coronavirus, sir, I'm really sorry. You're positive for coronavirus. You're going to have to go home and self-quarantine for 15 days. So
none of this makes sense at all.
that's why it's catch-22. So the one way to be sure that you're quarantined upon arrival is not to be symptomatic. If you're not symptomatic, then you're going to go to quarantine for 15 days. If you are, one way or the other, you'll get to go home. They'll give you the test, you'll be negative, and you get to go home, or you'll be positive. Sir, I'm really sorry. You're going to have to self-quarantine for 15 days. And it makes no sense at all. And then the poor guy, let's say our traveler has been gone for a while, so he goes from the airport and he's heading for Haggett. What's the first problem that he has? He gets to East Agania, and he's got to sit in that line, for an hour or two, right? So if he isn't sick by the time he gets to that line, he darn sure will be by the time he gets out of the line. And maybe he's positive, right? Because he's got to go home and self-quarantine. So then the guardsman comes along and said, well, hello, sir. I don't know if you know anything about the Wuhan virus, but I've got to spend some time educating you. Is that all right? Okay. I have this brochure here that I've been carrying around all day. I've only coughed on it twice and sneezed on it once. Would you like one? Yeah. The whole thing makes absolutely no sense. And that's why I have re-embraced the word common sense as debilitating over-reliance on common sense can be. In its complete absence, you can see how chaos rules the day. And that's what we have. Chaos rules the day. We're going to stop the spread of the virus by making hundreds and thousands of people sit in long lines with their engines running all day. Maybe the theory is that the exhaust gas coming from your car, in addition, this is really big, in addition to adding to carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Are you listening out there, environmental wackos? Yeah. But perhaps that carbon dioxide added to the atmosphere tends to kill the Wuhan virus or retarding its spread. So if that's the case, then what we need is more, I'm going to adopt Frenchie's vocabulary, no more checkpoints, choke points. Yeah. And the same thing with the curfew, which we can all be thankful that common sense finally came to the surface. When Ricky instituted the curfew after Typhoon Pamela, the reason was to deter crime. After the typhoon, there were no lights anywhere. The whole island was darker than 4 feet up a bear's posterior. Okay, well, we'll be back tomorrow to talk about that bear a little bit, and I've assigned the bear as the new mascot for the Republican Party, and I'll tell you why tomorrow. See you tomorrow.